5 intense plane crashes on the runway. Smithsonian Channel. Flying in a plane is pretty safe now, but air travel only became so reliable because previous accidents ushered in crucial safety improvements. Let's check out some of the most intense plane crashes that happened right on the runway. Number 5. Asiana Airlines Flight 214. A 7-year-old Asiana Airlines Boeing 777-200ER crashed on final approach to San Francisco International Airport, SFO. The accident marked the first time a Boeing 777 had crashed since its introduction into service in 1995. The aircraft cartwheeled and caught fire before being evacuated by the cabin crew. Amazingly, most passengers survived. Of the 307 passengers and crew, there were 3 fatalities and 49 seriously injured. The investigation by the U.S. National Transportation Safety Board concluded that the accident was caused by the flight crew's mismanagement of airplane's final approach. Deficiencies in Boeing's documentation of complex flight control systems and in Asiana Airlines pilot training were also cited as contributory factors.
Hotel, good morning, Asiana 214, final 7 miles out to AREP. Tower, Asiana 214, show final. Francisco Tower, Sky 5452, quiet bridge visual 28 right.
3 Sierra Foxtrot, radar contact, passing 600.
Hold position, country, sir.
Sky was 6389, fly heading 280, maintain 3000.
Number 4. Garuda Indonesia Flight 200. Garuda Indonesia Flight 200 was a regularly scheduled early morning flight that went terribly wrong after the plane overran the runway and ended up in a rice paddy. The accident occurred on March 7, 2007. The aircraft operating on the flight was a 14-year-old Boeing 737-400. The captain on the flight was 44-year-old Muhammad Marwoto Komar, who had worked for Garuda Indonesia for more than 21 years. Yet the captain made a landing that he should have aborted. The plane overran the runway, crashing through the perimeter fence and crossing a road. It hit an embankment before coming to a stop in a rice paddy. Fuel on the plane ignited and could not be reached by firefighting equipment because of its location. While most of the 133 passengers managed to escape, 20 passengers and 1 crew member perished. Number 3. Scandinavian Airlines Flight 687. Scandinavian Airlines Flight 686 was an MD-87 carrying 110 people and heading to Denmark. Collided on takeoff with the Cessna Citation II business jet carrying 4, heading to France. All 114 people on board the 2 aircraft passed away, as were 4 on the ground. A further 4 people on the ground were injured. Moving at close to 200 miles per hour, with its nose and wheel already in the air, the jetliner swerved to avoid the small plane, a Cessna Citation II, but struck it, destroying all 4 people on board. The SAS plane, a 10-year-old McDonnell Douglas MD-87 full of fuel, spun out of control, lost an engine, and a wing slid across a grassy area and hit 3 buildings before ramming into a baggage handling hangar and bursting into flames. Milan's chronic autumn fog apparently obscured the pilot's vision, but it was not clear why there has been no warning that the small plane was in the way. The thick fog had reduced visibility to less than 200 meters. Number 2. Air France Flight 4590. The famed Concorde experienced a tragic accident that helped seal its fate forever in aviation's history books. The Concorde planes had an impressive safety record until the day Air France Flight 4590 was scheduled to depart Charles de Gaulle International Airport in Paris for New York's John F. Kennedy International Airport. The plane was on its takeoff roll when the first officer called out the decision speed. Suddenly, the plane began to veer left, and the flight engineer urged the captain to abort the takeoff, but it was impossible by then. At the same time, the tower controller who gave the flight its takeoff clearance noticed flames coming from one of the aircraft's engines and advised the crew, 4590, you have flames behind you. A quick decision was made to land at Paris-Le Bourget Airport, but the fire spread too quickly. The crew's attempts to turn the limping jet failed, and it crashed into a cornfield 5 kilometers from the runway and a few meters from a hotel. It exploded at impact. The entire scenario played out in just over 2 minutes. On board were 100 passengers and 9 crew members, but the total victim count was 115, since a handful of guests at the nearby hotel were destroyed as a result of the impact and ensuing fire. An accident investigation revealed that Air France's 4590's right front tire on the left main landing gear was destroyed after having run over a strip of metal debris shed by an airplane that departed on the runway just 5 minutes prior. The investigators concluded the destruction of the tire likely resulted in large pieces of rubber being thrown against the underside of the left wing and rupturing part of a fuel tank. As a result, a severe fire broke out under the left wing, and around the same time, engines 1 and 2 suffered a loss of thrust as the fire engulfed the aircraft.
Obstacle ahead. Pull up. Terrain ahead. Pull up. Too low. Terrain.
Number 1. Continental Airlines Flight 1404. A Boeing 737 operated by Continental Airlines as Flight 1404 ran off the runway during takeoff from Denver International Airport, and a post-crash fire ensued. The flight was destined for George Bush Intercontinental Airport in Houston, Texas. The captain and 5 passengers were seriously injured, while 41 occupants of the plane suffered minor injuries. On the morning of the flight, the captain and first officer performed the required pre-flight safety checks. As they taxied into position for takeoff, the captain asked for information on wind and stated that it looks like there was some wind out there. The controller told them that the wind was at 27 knots. This was significantly up from the 11 knots that had been previously reported, but it was still well below the top end of the airline's published guidelines. As the plane began to take off, they accelerated to at least 100 miles per hour. The captain applied the plane's right rudder, a flight control device on the plane's tail, twice in the first seconds of the takeoff to correct the plane's position, but a 50-mile-per-hour gust hit and pushed the plane back to the left. The plane left the runway, crossed a snowy field, and scraped across a road and into another field. The rear fuselage was fractured and a fire broke out on the right side of the aircraft. The flight attendants and some pilots who were riding aboard the airplane helped to evacuate all the passengers. Witnesses said the fire was so intense that the overhead bins melted and dripped down onto the seats below. And that's all for today's video. See you next time.